fast am I? Good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line for Tuesday, the 10th of March. What would you like to talk about today? It's Alex sitting in for Andy for the next couple of weeks. Open line through till 1. Well, the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, says the Isle of Man government is beginning preemptive moves as the conflict in the Middle East continues, and it's going to ensure plans are in place if there's any potential disruption. But the question is, we're so small, what can we actually do about it? Do you think that we've got any power to mitigate the situation? Also, we've been talking on the station this morning about travel consultants on the island saying that some passengers due to fly via the Middle East are obviously going to start getting anxious, and they've been giving advice on how you can get where you might want to go. And should we have a London office? This is something that comes up. It's almost cyclical, this, isn't it? Something that comes up. Should we have a London office to further the Manx cause in the British capital? Would it be of value for money? Okay, and, why is the assisted dying bills taking so long to get royal assent? These are some of the questions that have been put by the influential Tynwald Constitutional Legal Affairs and Justice Committee to the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, and also the External Relations Executive Director, Chris Brannigan. So we'll hear more about that a little later on in the show. You might have an opinion on it. You might not. Let's see. But first of all, yesterday I got an email in, because yesterday on the Mannin Line, we got an email in from Simon regarding ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, obviously part of the Middle Eastern conflict. And Simon, in a rather blunt email, if you could write emails in a nice tone, that'd be nice, as opposed to threatening ones. But he said that a phone-in participant, Julian, did say that ships were sailing through the Strait of Hormuz and even added, I quote, even if they're going slow. And Simon says, however, that statement was false. If it's not corrected, I will be reporting the matter to Ofcom, as Julian would have understood what he said was not accurate. Well, thank you, Simon. First of all, Ofcom doesn't regulate the Isle of Man, so it was pointless. It would be Cura that you would be referring any complaint to. But we have fact-checked your complaint. Now, there is an important distinction to make here. According to multiple current international maritime and news reports, shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been severely disrupted but has not been completely stopped. Recent monitoring data, reported by maritime analysts and outlets such as Reuters and also MarketWatch, do show that a small number of vessels are still transiting the strait. Right now, I've actually got the Marine Global System, AIS, up in front of me, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 6 ships currently going through the Strait of Hormuz there. However, traffic has dropped dramatically from normal levels due to the ongoing conflict and the security warnings. Under normal circumstances, around 130 to 140 ships pass a day through the strait, but in recent days the number has reportedly fallen to single-digit daily transits, meaning only a handful of vessels are moving, whilst there are many others waiting or diverted. There are loads. I couldn't even begin to count them, quite frankly, that are all sort of sitting in the Gulf of Oman, okay, or waiting in a queue almost to get there. So the accurate position is that most commercial shipping has paused or avoided the route because of the risks, but some ships have continued to pass through, often cautiously or under special circumstances. So that means that a general statement that ships still sailing through the Strait of Hormuz is not necessarily incorrect, but it does need context, because traffic is currently dramatically reduced and highly disrupted rather than operating normally. So that's our fact-checked response to you, Simon. So I hope you feel that has done you justice. Let's go to the phones. Oh, I've spoken to this man before. This is John, who wants to talk politics. John, fire away.
Morning, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm not so bad. How are you?
Excellent. Fantastic. Yesterday, I caught the tail end of the program, and I believe it was Steve who came on. He was talking about the roads and what was happening with the traffic jam. Mm-hmm. But then he went a little bit further and, saying, well, if he were chief minister, he'd make these dramatic changes. And then somebody else mentioned you while you were talking with him, or while he was talking, and you read out what they said. Well, I formed a group some time ago. I've mentioned it on Mannin Line before. It's called futureisleofman.im. And I invite anyone who's listening who wants to see a change in the way the political system works on the island to have a look at the website, see, what you think. And if you want, get in touch, because I think it's important that, us as voters, us as the island, needs to get together and actually tell the prospective MHKs what it is that we want, rather than just, letting things happen. so to speak.
Now, John, obviously you've set this up with former MHK Chris Robertshaw, who's been a very vocal opponent, shall we say, or a critic, should I say, of the current administration. What do you think makes it different this time? Because quite frankly, everybody before an election who's standing says, I'll do things differently, I'll get in there and shake things up. The public do talk to the politicians, and once they get in, there seems to be very little change. So why are you different?
Well, I'm trying to encourage people to vote. I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I think it's less than 50% of people actually vote. And I asked the question, well, why is this? Well, the general term is voter apathy. Now, why is there voter apathy? Well, they look at all these MHKs or prospective MHKs and they say, well, I don't want to vote for them because they don't bring anything I want. So really what you've got now is people who just don't vote, and then that leaves the people that, who don't bring anything to the table, if you call it that, to get voted in. So what I'm trying to do is to say to all these people that don't vote, right, get involved. And even if you don't want to vote for how many MHKs are standing, then spoil your vote. But at least you've participated. At least you've actually said something. You've tried to get your voice heard.
Do you feel there's a bit of a detachment there, though, John, between, yes, I would always encourage people to have their democratic say, this is what people have fought and died for, but you're saying there that there's a detachment from maybe Steve and others on yesterday saying, we want change, but you've said there that if the people who are standing don't offer the change you want, surely it's a wasted vote because you're voting for someone who doesn't offer you what you want.
Okay, let's put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Last election, I had 4 MHKs before me, potential MHKs, let's say, and I looked at them. And each and every one of them had put their green energy. Now, what does green energy mean? Those 2 words, what exactly does that mean? Nobody could answer it. So I felt that I was being forced to vote for something that I didn't particularly want. I think it's important to vote.
Yeah.
So I had to vote. How do I describe this politically correctly? Here we go. For the lesser evil, shall we say.
Yes.
And I knew in my heart of hearts that, best of a bad bunch, we're not going to get anything done. And I thought at the time, I think it was Miles Walker who said, exact wording, I can't remember, he said something along the lines, the wonderful thing about the Isle of Man is that anyone can stand for MHK, even your village idiot.
I'm not sure that...
I think...
I can see the point. I'm not sure it's a direct quote, maybe, but I'd have to check that. But I see your point. Yes, anyone can. But surely that's also the why you might say it's the a weakness of democracy. It's also a strength, isn't it? That we are all part of society, so everyone should have the opportunity to take part in actually running that society if they feel they should.
Yeah, well, exactly, and this is it. But you have to ask the question: why is there so much voter apathy? Well, all I hear is, well, nobody stands for the thing that I want. Okay, so what is it that you want then? Well, you need to speak up. And this is what I'm trying to do with Future Isle of Man, to get people to speak up, because the most important people are the voter. Because the voter puts MHK in power. That's where the MHK gets his authority from. It's from the voter. So,
John, the last general election, my producer just got me the info here, the turnout was, as you say, just over 50%, 50.7%. So that's half of eligible voters, because it was about 64,700 voters on the electoral roll. And the previous general election was 53%. What would success look like to you in terms of voter turnout?
I would like to see it in the 70, 80 range, somewhere there.
Okay.
I mean, that to me would be a more indicative value of what the people actually feel. 50%, okay, that's a majority, but still, it's a 50-50.
And in terms of the actual politicians or potential politicians who are standing, would you see yourself as more a consultancy body? Because surely if everyone's coming to you and saying, well, this is what we want, surely, effectively, you're collating ideas that potential candidates could then use. And where would you put yourself in terms of the political spectrum? Are you, trying to be centre? Are you trying to be left of centre? Are you trying to be slightly more right wing? Who, if you were advising politicians, how would you do that to ensure it was fair and unbiased?
That would depend on what the people wanted on the island. And, if they were swinging one way or the other, well, that's the direction you go.
Okay.
Let's put it another way. Let's take some of the recent bills that have gone through. I'm advocating referendums. So we've had the MHKs vote these down, but how do they know what the population wants? You go into the surgeries and you get maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The surgery is only hour and a half long. So if you've got 20 people there, you've only got 3-4 minutes to tell the MHK what you want.
In terms of referendums, though, John, and what the people want, I'm going to say something which could possibly be, considered quite controversial by many. A lot of the time, if you put the decision to the wider public, they don't know what's best for them. Historically, that has been the case. Sometimes government makes unpopular decisions, not just here, I'm talking about in other democracies, unpopular decisions which they know is in their best interests, whereas the public, a lot of the time, can vote with heart rather than head. Now, do you think that that's necessarily the best thing for us? Because depending on which side of the argument you're on, economically, you can say that Brexit has not been a great success. However, it has allowed Britain to break away from what it saw as the, being basically handcuffed to Europe. But economically, it wasn't in their best interest, but they still did it anyway because it went to a referendum.
Okay, so I'll answer that with a question. Mm-hmm. What is the purpose of government?
To govern.
And when you answer that, what is the purpose of government? And once you answer that, you'll get your answer.
But the democracy works on the fact that you vote for someone to represent your interests, not for them to come back every 5 minutes and ask you if the decision is what you want here. Otherwise, there's no point having representatives.
Well, that's true, but it's not necessarily every 5 minutes.
No.
It depends on how we create this system, if you like. This is where we need to all get together and work out something. How you do it. Some people would, say, I want a referendum on every single thing. Well, no, I don't think so.
Well, wait a minute, John. Let me just pick up on that. Why is their view? You just said that you can't just cast aside views that don't match yours if you're making a consultation here. If that person wants a referendum on that, why is that less valid?
No, it's not less valid. But when you get some people together coming up with an idea, that's what I'm saying. Some people might put this suggestion forward or that suggestion, or they might say want it every few minutes, and then the others will say, no, I don't want it every few minutes. We need to have it on specific matters of whatever. And that's where you get your agreement together. That's where you come up with a strategy and a system.
But surely that's what government does anyway, isn't it? That's what the Parliament does. You vote for people who go together and they come up with whoever has the majority vote, and they vote for something and they debate it in a debating chamber. So you're actually describing surely what we have in place. I mean, I'm not saying whether we've got the right personalities in there, but the actual process is the same, isn't it?
I think the world's changed a lot, Alex. I really do. And I don't think anyone trusts the political system at the moment, given that the supposed highest court in the land, with the utmost authority, has been defied twice by the Department of Infrastructure. I don't have any confidence in that highest authority in the land. Okay.
John, just remind people then, if they want to get in touch with you, where the website is that they have to go to again?
It's futureiom.im.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, John. Always lovely to chat and debate with you. Hope you have a good day.
Indeed. Thanks very much, Alex. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Nice to chat to John there with his views. Interesting final salvo from him, because the highest court in the land has been defied twice by the Department of Infrastructure, he says, on 2 cases. I'm pretty sure I can guess what one of them is. So what power does the highest court in the land have? And why isn't the highest court of the land doing anything about it? They don't seem bothered. It's a good point, actually, John. Right. Let's go straight to the line. Oh, I was expecting one at some point, but it's nice and early. Hello, Bonzo. How are you?
Hello. Yes, fine. Yes, as to the horse trams, isn't Sarah Maltby putting a motion next month about proceeding with the horse trams?
Well, she's putting a motion basically to say come up with a business case. But, of course, the argument is that this has already been done, and it was de-scoped by the Department for Infrastructure, who said, well, actually, we need more money. Whereas the argument is that they've been given the money already, and now Tynwald is having to sort it out. But I think John's point was that Tynwald, the highest authority in the land, has told them to do it already, and they haven't. They've defied it. And then there is something called MINDEC, the ministerial decision, which is part of ministerial government, where the minister could actually just turn around and make a decision and say, we're doing it. And that hasn't been done either. So, but that's a whole other argument. You wanted to respond to what was being said, didn't you?
Yes, the generality of it. Yes, all very much populist, Reform UK kind of thinking, that somehow government is always wrong, and the electorate need guidance by virtue of referendum. Because, of course, as we both know, referendum depend very much on the question that you frame.
But in fairness, I'm not going to take John's side here, because that's what I try and do. Is that a referendum is people having their say, and I'll use the Brexit argument again. That if you accept, even for the sake of this argument, that Brexit has been damaging to the UK economy, people voted to do that act of self-harm. So they had the right to do it. That's what we have the freedom to do. So surely we have the right to be able to vote for things that aren't in our best interests.
Yes, but what are they voting on? Is the point. Reducing a complex, series of very complex things. Well, let's take assisted dying, for example. Let's have a referendum on assisted dying. Right, okay. Hugely complicated issue, which has racked both our legislature and other legislators, and is busy racking Westminster at the moment. But do you think people should be able to take their own life if they're having unbearable suffering? Yes or no? Now, that's the kind of reduction to a referendum question that you'd have.
And it's not necessarily for most people a yes or no answer. That unless people have experienced
that's right.
They struggle with their own morals and ethics, don't they?
That's right. So when you have something that people will have a very much divergent views on, so you don't think you can get it through, let's say capital punishment, then putting it into a referendum gets rid of all the detail, and populist sentiment can go and vote for it, a la Brexit, and then the argument is, it is the will of the people. Why aren't you enacting it? Even though it's extremely complicated and also pretty wrong.
So, Bonzo, I put to you the same I put to John then. In terms of that, do you feel that government should be able to make unpopular decisions which are in the people's best interest? I'm making it sound as if government patronises its population, and that's not what I'm saying, but government makes unpopular decisions because it knows the details, the ins and the outs, a lot of the time, and we as the population have to suck it up. And if we don't like those decisions, like in September, if we don't like things that any of our elected representatives have done, we boot them out, surely.
Well, yes, that's entirely the point. Sometimes government has to, and indeed a lot of government, is actually coming up with the least worst option rather than the best option, because there are all sorts of other competing things for resources, time and money.
So, Bonzo, in terms of what John said at the very end there, though, we elect our elected representatives to go into Tynwald, and then a number of them form a government. And, Tynwald votes on things usually the government wins on its votes, and it instructs the civil service to do things. Now, John's highlighted there, he's lost trust in the government, especially because the two examples he gave was that the DOI has defied the will of Tynwald, the highest court of the land, in his opinion, on 2 occasions. Now, whether we boot people out and put new people in September is not going to change that feeling of trust within the government, because he obviously feels that the bureaucratic side of the government, the unaccountable bit, is running amok.
Well, in terms of the defying Tynwald bit, I think, as I think I've explained before, They they de-scoped things, but spent the money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They had the authority to do that. But then, of course, when they come back...
Remind us where the authority comes from, because it didn't go to Tynwald, did it? It wasn't a vote.
No, but they had the authority, I believe, that had been delegated in the plan. To re-scope the money that had been allocated.
So basically, Tynwald did a vote on the money, and it went back to Council of Ministers, who permitted the de-scoping, but it didn't go back to Tynwald, so it overrode Tynwald, didn't it, is the point I think he's making.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yes, but overriding is not defined.
Well, if the highest court of the land has told you to do something, and then you, who is next down the pecking order, if my boss told me to do something and I turned round and didn't do it, or actually did the opposite of what he's told me to do, I would be wrong. I would be on the one under gross misconduct.
Mm-hmm. But this is where you get to things being passed and then being implemented.
Yes, but you can understand John's perspective of that's why he's lost trust, because surely Tynwald has the final say. It's the ultimate court of the land. It's the highest authority.
Well, yes, it is the legislature, but it isn't the administration.
But the administration doesn't outrank the legislature, doesn't it? So the administration should do as it's told, surely.
Yes, well, that's a whole thing of theory of government about that, because the administration could say, well, we have we also have the will of the people. We're elected representatives. We're asked to form a government.
Yeah, but I'm talking about at the civil service level of the administration, is what he's referring to, how the department has defied.
Well, the department is the minister, and the minister is the department.
Mm.
Surely that's a question of the direction given by the minister.
It's a good point.
And by the Council of Ministers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Bonzo.
So that's it.
Lovely. Nice to speak to you as always. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers.
Lovely to speak to Bonzo there. If you'd like to join in the debate, do you agree with Bonzo? Do you agree with John there? That was very interesting, actually, because it's two completely polar opposite views of democracy. Please do get in touch. Obviously, there's plenty of other stuff to talk about. If you'd like to get in touch, please do so. When it comes to some of your messages, let's go through some of them now. Texter 061 says, does anyone know what's happening with the steam packet in Dublin Port? We tried to book a trip to Dublin in the middle of July, only to be told there's no contract with Dublin Port. No contract. But I know people who've already booked on the ferry at this time. That's text 061. Well, my producer's checked for us. It says steam packet sailing to Dublin, still listed on the company's official 2026 timetable, including crossings in late July through to August. According to the steam packet's published sailing schedule, there are Douglas to Dublin sailings planned on dates such as the 26th and the 30th of July. So there we go. Hope that clears it up for you. The details are on the website there. Text at 566 says, most ships transiting through the Strait of Hormuz are turning off their AIS, referring to the earlier discussion about what's going on with shipping. The shipping itself isn't the problem so much as the refineries being bombed. There are around 100 million of barrels of oil floating around, waiting for price rises. It all seems like planned economics. Thank you, 566. If you can give me any evidence of that as opposed to your opinion, that'd be great. Big John in Ramsey. Big John in Ramsey. Ramsey Town Commissioners have not objected to the proposed cannabis cafe in Parliament Street. While I have nothing against cannabis as a personal choice, having it on the main street feels wrong. It risks normalising it in society and placing it in open view of children. I'm very concerned about the decision not to object. We'll look into that, Big John, in terms of the planning and whether Ramsey Town Commissioners are objecting or not. I suppose from the point of view of cannabis, yes, you can see it has been normalised in the same way that we've done the opposite thing with smoking, haven't we? When I was growing up, whilst it was smelly and it was horrible and it led to horrible diseases, it was quite commonplace. Whereas now, as a smoker, it's you're almost a pariah. It's almost socially outcast, and you can come back from a night out not smelling of an ashtray as well, which is quite nice. Sue says, I texted yesterday about my concern regarding the many new arrivals to the island and whether this is being monitored to ensure infrastructure keeps pace. I think we can probably guess what most people's opinions are on that. So, someone then phoned to mention the rising car numbers, and I agree with them completely. I think that was Steve who was on yesterday. Thank you, Steve. Over the last 5 years, I think car numbers have increased greatly. Most families now seem to have at least 2 cars, so the extra traffic is noticeable. I wonder if there will become a time when potential new residents need to be more carefully vetted. Well, thank you, sir. I mean, I'd like to know what you mean by vetted, as in you're only allowed on the island with 1 car, or more criminal database checks. I mean, there's 2 quite levels of vetting. Whether you've got the financial means to sustain yourself. I know for well that getting into Jersey, of course, is a lot harder than getting into the Isle of Man in terms of residency requirements. But yeah, I got stuck in the traffic on the way home yesterday, and we did have that report from the DOI yesterday that said that they were managing, they coordinate the roadworks there. Sorry, I do a bit of a giggle because if you were stuck in any of yesterday's traffic, you can't begin to believe that somebody somewhere actually coordinated that. But did you have a better experience this morning? Because the problems yesterday were quite substantial because there is that closure down at White Hoe just to replace some manhole covers. But the Department of Infrastructure said that roadworks are coordinated. Changes have been made to the timing of traffic lights to mitigate these traffic volumes, but they weren't in place in time. Horses, stable doors, bolting, etc. And a spokesman for Manx Utilities, who are doing the work, says, unfortunately, the essential work required does necessitate a full road closure for health and safety considerations for contractors. If anyone from Manx Utilities is listening, give us details. Health and safety is a fantastic excuse. Oh, it's health and safety. What details are there that we now have to close the whole road as opposed to in the old days when we used to have temporary traffic lights that close the road? If there are genuine reasons, that would be lovely. But the one thing that is noticeable out of both Manx Utilities and Department of Infrastructure is no word sorry. Goes a long way, just saying. So if you've caused people to be 2 hours late in the morning, have some appreciation for the human beings that you're inconveniencing. Maybe saying the word sorry always works.
Tonight at 5:30 here on Manx Radio, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for Countryside.
We'll be hearing from Raymond Gorn from Poolvash Farm, talking about growing up on the farm as a youngster and also talking about Southern Young Farmers.
I speak to the CEO of Manx Wildlife Trust, Graham Makepeace Warren, to find out more about a new location for their internships when they are picked later in the year. And I went along for a skeet at the Southern Young Farmers ploughing match down the south of the island, speak to some of the people ploughing on the day and the judges.
That's all in Countryside tonight here on Manx Radio at 5:30. And don't forget you can download and subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
For the doze you deserve, it's Big Bed Month at Lifestyle Furniture. Get more space for your snooze with a king-size bed for the price of a double. Includes luxury brands Harrison Spinks, Enchanted House, K-Med and more. Plus, we'll give you a free pair of pillows and mattress protector with every purchase. Dream bigger with Big Bed Month at Lifestyle Furniture. Visit us at Snugborough Trading Estate, Union Mills. Open 7 days a week. Terms and conditions apply.
Jeffrey, that suit looks terrible. The sleeves are far too long and it doesn't button up in the middle. You need made to measure.
Made to measure? See if I could afford that.
You didn't complain when Spectrum made all our bespoke windows.
Ah, that was different. At Spectrum, you get a bespoke service at an off-the-shelf price, whether you choose quality PVC or aluminium.
Visit Spectrum Windows, the showroom, Derby Road, Ramsey, or call 817777.
Easter Sunday and Monday, catch the Graddle Glen Railway Easter Bunny trains from 10 to 4:30, running from Lencowan Station to see the Easter Bunny at the Sea Lion Rocks tea rooms, with free Easter eggs for children. Enter our free Easter egg hunt to win a £100 voucher for the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. Afternoon tea for 4 at Milltown, a giant Easter Bunny, and a year's family pass to Graddle Glen Railway. Purchase tickets in advance at ggr.org.uk. Supported by your nation station, Manx Radio.
The previous message was brought to you by QVH, the island's premier serviced offices and co-working space in the heart of Douglas. Call 639 940 for more information or visit qvhpremierofficespace.com.
Manx Manx Radio's Mannin Line through until 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's 25 to 1. Please do give me a call. It'd be great to chat to you if you either agree, disagree, or you've got something new to talk about. New callers, are welcome here. 66 13 68. Even better if it's something positive. I don't know, like the fact of just how glorious the daffodils are beginning to look all around the island when you're driving along. Have you noticed all on the roadsides and the hedges? Lovely to have that sort of blanket of yellow. It looks really nice, even though the weather possibly isn't showing them off at their best at the moment. So, yeah, do give me a call, 66 13 68. Robert's on. Hello, Robert.
How you doing?
I'm not so bad, boy. How are you?
We're getting there. I was going to talk about inflation.
Fire away.
Sorry, I'm going to be one of the downers on the show, but I mean, it's just, you've got to appreciate that it's going to go up immensely in price over the next 6 months.
It probably is due to the economic situation. And do you think there's anything we can really do about it?
I think it's end times, to be honest with you. I think we're gonna see some type of change in the system or something. People just have enough. I think if you look at the basics of organisations, I think they're just about getting it together whereby they can talk to each other on Discord and various avenues like that, and you've all got WhatsApp and Messenger now and what have you, and that's good. So I think things are just about coming together whereby people are just about linking the dots together.
The dots together. I don't quite get you, Rob. The dots together. The dots together of what?
I think beforehand it was hard to have a group conversation and things like that. But I think people are just about affording their own computers and getting onto Zoom conversations and having conferences and just a bit of corralling the troops,
Okay. And what would be the outcome of that, do you feel?
Well, I think we're going to have more inclusive politics. And I think that, the little man's going to have a say a bit more. I mean, there may be a few little Englanders running around like Farage and what have you, but I mean, I think, other people will come on board and be a bit more inclusive.
So would
beforehand, it was beyond people's means, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, in terms of standing for election, of course, it is a paid role if you get voted in. Are you going to stand in September?
No.
All right. Okay. Why wouldn't you? Because you obviously are very keen on people being involved in the and stepping up. What puts you off?
Well, I mean, I'm not really in a position to carry the people.
Okay.
I've done what I wanted to do, and I've gone past that. The chair's being passed to someone else basically. So. But
you'd be happy for some newer faces.
I'd be interested in a community role on one of the boards, maybe the homeless board or something like that, or the housing board and communities board. But I think that only comes up once every October, so I missed it last time.
Okay. Well, lovely to speak to you, Robert. Thanks very much for your comment there, and stay warm out there. Lovely to speak to Robert there. Yeah. Do we feel that? I mean, it's maybe the world of social media that has allowed the politics to become more diverse, more populist. Because there is, thank you very much, a message in from Liz, who says, I keep hearing the phrase, it's what the people want. But the people are not one single entity. There are many varied views. I seldom agree with what I see on social media. That's a very good point, actually, Liz, because social media, a lot of the time when people do comments, let's be honest, social media is toxic. Okay, you can highlight some of the good points, but I think generally that social media does seem to be very toxic. People talk on there in a way they would never talk to your face, which makes it not very social, if we're honest about it. So it does, I say on my personal opinion, it does concern me when you do find people, politicians, making decisions based on purely social media as opposed to maybe talking to real people. But thank you, Liz. I get what you're saying there. And also... let's have a look. Oh, thank you. But Julian's been back on. We're back on the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you, Julian. He sent he sent an email in saying, Alex, see the story in yesterday's EU Observer So we've looked at that. This is regarding France leading an EU naval mission to protect the Strait of Hormuz, the tankers there, because of the Iranian war. We have fact-checked it, that reports do confirm that France is proposing a defensive naval mission to help protect commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz once the most intense phase of the current conflict has passed. So it's not there yet, they're proposing it. President Emmanuel Macron has said that the aim would be to escort container ships and oil tankers and to help keep a key global trade route open. However, this is still a proposal under discussion with European and allied navies, and there's no confirmation yet that a full EU mission has formally begun. So the general idea reported in the article is broadly accurate, but the operation itself has not yet been launched. Thank you very much. I'd say that the Euro Observer there that says it is to lead a mission, well, that's a bit of a sensationalist and misleading false news headline. Actually, it's a proposal. It's not actually a mission that's been led at the moment, so thank you very much for that. Just to give you some more news coming up, a key route in Douglas is going to be shut for a day this weekend. Quarterbridge Road, just to add to your woes, I'm afraid, it's going to be closed on Sunday, March the 15th. It'll be shut between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. from its junction with Alexander Drive to the junction with Selborne Drive. And the Department for Infrastructure says it's to allow for work on trees to take place. Also, I did spot on Glen Crutchery Road today, there's temporary traffic lights just up from the St Ninians roundabout, as I call it, St Ninians Crossroad. It's not a roundabout. The St Ninians Crossroads there, which means that the traffic is backing up into the St Ninians Crossroads. So there are problems there in terms possibly of your drive home in and out later. Once again, they're all coordinated, apparently. And speaking of transport, thank you to Texter223, who says, the past couple of days have seen traffic chaos on our roads, much of it caused by the timing of traffic light systems. In defence of the DOI, they did say they were altering some of the traffic light systems to improve the flow. Said the police need to do more traffic control. It's becoming a real problem. Now, do the police still do traffic control? I know in terms of events or when there's a possibility of an accident that the police do traffic control, but do we call on the Alamein Constabulary to just control the traffic generally? A bit like the old days of there was a policeman down at the bottom of Broadway, wasn't there? Yeah, used to be in a little hut there. Do the constabulary still do that? I'm not sure. Peter Murcott's on the line. Hello, Peter. Do you remember the policeman at the bottom of Broadway?
I don't know. I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about the question of the war in Iran, which it has a direct impact upon the Isle of Man. One of the problems why we've had trouble with Iran for the last 47 years and why this war's come, which is now going to impact the island if it doesn't come to an end very soon, is because back in 1978, there was, and beginning of 1979, there was the overthrow of the Persian monarchy. Now, what really needed to happen at that point was there were things about the Shah's regime which were unlikable, but really the solution would have been had Persia adopted a sort of constitutional monarchy. But by overthrowing the monarchy, they destabilized the country. And thereafter, we've had nothing but trouble. We had exactly the same problem, of course, in Britain back in the 17th century, whereby monarchs weren't ruling properly, and eventually we had the 1688, what's sometimes called the Glorious Revolution, when William III and Mary II took over, and they became constitutional monarchs, and they were not able to do some of the things that the Stuarts had done. One of your problems was, of course, some of the Western countries, France notably, at that time gave airtime to the original Ayatollah to be able to broadcast into Iran, and that all helped to destabilize the regime. And so, really, as we reflect on the things that are going on now, if efforts had been made to come to some sort of different solution instead of destabilizing the Persian monarchy, I don't think we would have all the trouble that we've had ever since. And what worries me also is that there is a sort of destabilizing work afoot at the British monarchy, and I'm alarmed at the rudeness that the present king has when he goes out in public, people addressing him by his Christian name, which is downright bad manners, and the way in which people are trying to communicate with him whenever he goes out on official engagements. So they might reflect on the fact that in every single country, when you destabilize the monarchy, you actually are making way for social chaos in the future. And that's been proved in Iran, and it's been proved in various other places as well. And I think we ought to learn the lessons of that history.
So you feel that, with the benefit of hindsight, you've just obviously described the historical situation in Iran and how we got to where we are today. And I was always taught in politics at school that by having a constitutional monarch, it's almost like the safeguard or the lock and key that stops us possibly, when people talk about how great a republic could be, but if you're not a fan of Trump, you can use that as an example of actually this is what you could have instead.
Yes. I think it isn't just an historical perspective. I saw this back in 1978. I remember when I was in a certain town in the Midlands, an Iranian got a petition going, and it was about the persecution that was taking place. I think it was 1979 after the Ayatollah took over. And he wanted me he'd sign something or other, which I didn't actually do, but they were also collecting and so on. And I stood and talked with him for a while. And I said, the trouble reason why you're in the problem that you're in now, and I saw that back in 1979, I said, you shouldn't have overthrown the Shah. You should have really worked towards a constitutional settlement for him, and now you've got something 10 times worse, which was already showing itself even as long ago as then. And you really made a great mistake. And he said, oh, no, the Shah's regime was bad. I said, well, in Britain, we had monarchs who had a regime which was bad. But what happened was that we established a constitutional monarchy, and we made sure that we had a situation where the country was stabilised. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that's the big mistake they made. And we're paying for that now,
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Peter. It's a very interesting look back. And actually, there is an element to the fact of whether you do learn the lessons of history. And a lot of the time, I think if you look at world geopolitical affairs, the argument could be made that we don't.
Manx Memorials in Ballasalla will guide you in creating beautiful, lasting memorials across the island. From a wide range of granite and marble headstones, custom inscriptions, expert renovations and pet memorials, adding care and compassion in every detail. We offer families peace of mind for years with perpetual grave care. We're there when you need them most. Call 843-861 or email matthew@manxmemorials.co.uk.
SMS Trading. New and second-hand furniture from flat pack to fully built. See our range at 3 St Paul Square, Ramsey. All-island delivery and man in a van service available. Call SMS Trading on 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
Stock arriving weekly at Ramsey Garden Centre. Discover potted spring bulbs, summer bulbs, seed potatoes, onion and garlic sets, wildflower seeds, sweet pea, microgreens, plantable biodegradable pots and propagation essentials. Grow smarter, greener, season after season with Ramsey Garden Centre.
The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
We make oil heating easy with our range of services. Whether it's our free smart tank monitoring systems or just our efficient all-island deliveries, Ellen Vannin Fuels has it covered. Call us on 844 000 to find out more.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
I got caught out by the music there. Right, we've still got about another, 7 minutes left on the Mannin Line this afternoon. If you want to give us a call, 66 13 68. However, I've got quite a few texts to get through. So Steve's been in touch. Thank you, Steve. Who says, the voters are not one homogenous block, that's a good word, who all want the same thing. So every person who is pro-fossil fuels and anti-renewables, despite the evidence about market volatility, put my teeth in, and environmental damage, there is another voter with the opposite view who supports wind farms and renewable energy. That's why we vote for politicians who then have to have the mandate to make decisions. The arguments currently being made to defend fossil fuels are really quite something. Thank you, Steve, for your opinion on that one. Barry's been in saying, good afternoon, couldn't government put on a commuter train to ease the pressure on the roads and charge, say, £10 to £15 a week? If it ran several times a day, it might bring in a fair bit of money. To be honest, Barry, the idea of commuter trains and commuter trams and things like this is something that's been bounded around for years. Yes, it takes an investment, nowhere near as much as we've thrown at the Liverpool ferry terminal, but it requires politicians with vision and backbone, and that it's never got any further. We have made a huge expansion of Peel in recent years in terms of residential area, and there is an empty old former railway line trackbed that goes directly to it. You could put a light tramway on that. Commuter services, cut down on your traffic into town in the morning. Yes, but no one wants to stick their head above the parapet with that, either in a political sense, or there'll be some chief executive somewhere who will talk them out of it. Pete, so the other way yesterday. I drove through the traffic lights at Anarchy yesterday morning at around 8 a.m. I arrived at my destination on Ballacameen Road a little before 8:15 for an appointment. After the appointment, hope it went well, by the way, Pete. Around 8:50, I set off for M&S and arrived at 9 to an almost empty car park. No problem at all. I have to say, lucky you, Pete. I'm not sure you were in the majority yesterday morning in terms of traffic into town, but obviously setting off early at 8 o'clock seems to be the secret. Texter 337 says, do the horse trams make money? They're often empty and seem to cause traffic queues along the promenade. Brexit was used as an example of a referendum, yet the money promised for the NHS and control of immigration never happened. Well, that's true. Referendums are all well and good if the government talks the truth from the beginning. I'm not sure what Brexit's got to do with the horse trams. It says, but to me, the horse trams seem more for the enthusiasts than a high-demand form of transport, and I believe they should be scrapped. Well, the railways do make money, the heritage railways. The TT makes a loss in terms of its direct cost, in the same as the railways, in the same way as the Villa Marina and the Gaiety Theatre, in the same way as your schools, in the same way as your hospital. They all have a direct cost. Now, in terms of economic value, how much more they bring in, the TT, it was well over 40 million, I think, was the economic boost last year. The railways, the heritage railways, of which the horse trams are a key part, being the only ones in the world, that's about 11.5 million a year. So, hope that answers your question. Now that Texter 696, if you could put your names on these, it'd be great. Say hello to people. Now that the 4-foot wall's not going to happen in Ramsey Harbour, does that mean that Harbour Road will not get repaired? The road is in a terrible state. There are many roads around Ramsey. Waterloo Road and Albert Road are also in serious need of repair. Do the Ramsey Commissioners have any say in the roads, or are they only responsible for things like putting up flowers and making the town look better? Well, if so, I hope they do a good job on that. But no, it's the DOI that do the roads. On the road leading to the old Grand Island Hotel, 11 potholes next to each other have been filled in, but the repairs have left raised patches, so now you drive over mounds rather than potholes. And Texter 155 says, I drove along the road from Sandygate to Sulby. It had lovely, beautiful, flat, brand new tarmac laid, with hardly anyone living on it and very little traffic. Now they've raised the level by putting up so much tarmac down you can see over the hedges. Thank you to Texter 155. That is a question that we do get text about in lots of questions. Why is it the arterial routes aren't being done? There's a lot of comments on our Facebook page. I think the Bennypot Road's having a closure next week for repairs to the carriageway. Yet the Douglas to Ramsey Coast Road is diabolical. But we never seem to do anything about that. So why are the arterial routes in such a bad condition and don't get the investment that some places like Sandygate to Sulby get in terms of having new surfaces down? I can see why many people get frustrated by that, and once again, that we have lots of comments on that. Al has been on. An ultimate example of the need for a referendum is the assisted dying bill, probably one of the most powerful bills ever considered, giving the state such authority. The public voted on the principle without hearing all the adverse details that could come with this law. When you say the public voted on the principle, No, there was a consultation, but there wasn't a referendum on this. No, the Parliament voted on the principle. Politicians decided it was acceptable for the people of this island, but much of the concerning evidence was only available to those who listened to the sittings, as I did, or carried out their own research. Thank you, Al. Another comment here from Brian. Maybe it's time for the Isle of Man to make voting in the next election compulsory for everyone over 16. Interesting. Brian says that this would make everyone accountable for the government we get. Yeah, the other side of that is that, I do believe we all should vote and exercise our vote. Once again, people have lived and died for it. But what happens if you don't vote? If it's compulsory and you break the law, we're going to start filling up Derby with no voters, conscientious objectors. Are we really going down that route? Yeah, once again, that might have unintended consequences, maybe. Maybe Brian thinks that's important enough. It's a big enough deterrent. Text to 923, he says, one major flaw in the electoral system is that once a person is voted in, however inept, they are more than less guaranteed 5 years of employment. 5-year terms are too long. Can you imagine us having to go through all of this every few years? Crikey. Very quickly, last month, I think I've got through your text. Thank you very much. Julian's been quickly on about Iran. Hello, Julian.
All right, Alex, how you doing?
I'm not so bad, mate. Yes, you've got about 1.5 minutes. Sorry, mate. Fire away.
Yeah, just quoting from the Journal of Middle Eastern and Islamic Studies, the revolution in 1979, this is going on from what Peter said.
Yep.
The Ayatollah Khomeini argued that monarchy had no basis in Islamic governance and that Muslims had a duty to oppose such tyrants. He also mentioned that he wanted to have a direct ideological rejection of hereditary father-to-son succession. Just remind me, who is it that the regime has just announced as the new leader?
I don't think you need to remind me, because I can see exactly where you're going. Yes, it's his son.
It's Moshtaba Khamenei, who, by the way, has got that company that Ali Ansari, who has the go-between, has Birch Ventures at 14 Athol Street in Douglas, which is still active despite the UK banning that guy from having any kind of financial things in the UK. So I still wonder why that company's going. But if we're talking about the regime having some kind of moral high ground, if the Ayatollah's son is now being touted, the whole reason for why they got rid of the Shah is kind of it's a bit hypocritical, really, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you, Julian, for your thoughts. I'm going to have to leave it there. The story he refers to, by the way, is on the Manx Radio website because the government has responded to reports that links the new Iranian leader to an island-registered company. And the Isle of Man government says that it takes matters relating to financial crime, sanctions, compliance and the integrity of international financial systems extremely seriously. The full story on that, which was reported in the Daily Mail Online, is available via manxradio.com. Do go and check it out. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Nice to have a few callers on. I'd love to speak to some new voices over the next couple of weeks. So if you've never rung before, I won't bite, don't worry. I'll be back tomorrow at midday. Up next, Christy DeHaven is on the way with 1 to 3. Thank you very much to the Mannin Line producer that is our fact checker, Chris Quirk. Have a lovely Tuesday afternoon. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Take care. Ta-da.